Alright, let's make a marble. Alright, before I begin, I need to make sure I have the right materials for the kind of marble that I'm going to make. I hope the sound is alright. I did a test of sound doing a video about a week ago. To make stringers, I have them already prepared. You see in all these little test tubes I have colored glass threads that I've pulled to do decorating. I'll be using some of those. Green, yellow, and let's find a blue. There we go. So very often you'll see me waving the glass rod in front of the flame, which I've always called flashing. There might be another term. It's gradually bringing the glass rod up to temperature so that it doesn't crackle and pop and explode. Glass has a strain point. The glass I'm using actually has two of them. One around 500 degrees and one around 900 degrees. So if you can get it past that first one, you won't have as many pops and pieces of the rod exploding off the end. The marble I'm going to make first is a flower marble. I've started melting a larger diameter clear rod that has a cut end. The cut end often gets devitrified, which means that the glass oxidizes and gets tiny bubbles on the surface, which looks like dirt. So I'm tweezing those off until the glass is clean. Let's see. My first step for the clear rod, now that I've got it a little bit clean, is to get a droplet on the end. I want the droplet to be approaching twice the diameter of the rod itself. After that, I will flatten it. I have a graphite marvering plate next to my torch. Try to show that at some point. But I will hold it upright and make it flat and use this graphite paddle to assist and make it flatter than gravity or the surface tension of the glass would allow. The bigger I make the disc, the more I can wrap the clear around it when I turn the whole flower design inside out, which will make sense in a minute. So there's my droplet. Pretty big. I'm flattening it on the graphite plate and giving it a little extra squish so that the disc is bigger. I'm going to draw the flower two-dimensionally on that disc as a series of dots. The first thing I'm going to do is add the stamen in the middle of the flower. I'll turn down my torch because the little thread portion is easy to overheat. I'll just make some little dots for the stamen. Middle of the flower. I'll bring the temperature back up for a few seconds, and I'm going to draw the petals in blue. The petals won't, in this case, be dots, but they'll be little dashes. I'll do the first row of dashes, and I'll show you guys. Now I'm going to do another row of dashes towards the edge of the disc. Now I'm going to increase the heat and melt those little slugs of glass into the flat disc. I'll show you that in a second. Now I'm going to melt these in a little bit further, and I'm going to poke in with a dental pick to give them a pointy end of the petal. So I have to melt these in and then make them a little bit mushy, but only on the area that I'm going to work on. If I make it too melty, then as I push it, I'll just deform the whole disc. I want to just make it soft in the area where I'm going to push in. I might not be able to focus on that. Might be able to see it. I don't know. A couple of those down towards the bottom of the disc right now. I'll do the rest. As you can see, I'm doing like one or two of these at a time. If I had more petals, it would take longer. But this is I'm doing a quicker version. Now all of those are pressed in. Now I'm going to melt them completely into the surface of the disc, and I'm going to change my angle, heating the edge of the disc so that it starts to slump towards the ground. We're using gravity to turn the disc into a cup shape. When it starts getting wiggly and falling down, I'm going to flatten it on my little marble plate. You can't see it yet, but the design has shrunk a little bit. It's pulled in towards the center. Each time I melt the edge, well, it's pointed in a downward direction, so gravity pulls it into a cup shape. The glass from the outside of the disc is being pulled outside around the edge and coming up into the center. And I'm giving it a little assist by pushing it down flat. Can't quite see those little dots and dashes coming up into the glass yet. You can see that the design has gotten a little bit smaller. Ooh. I waved at people. Alright, so let's shrink it one more time, and then I'm going to add the petioles around the petals in green to give the flower a little more dimension. That's cupping a little bit. Flatten it. Now, I don't know if you can get the angle, but you can see. Oops. Not that. You can maybe see those are starting to grow into the disc. Alright, I'm going to get my heat up for just a second here. I don't want any cracks to form, as the temperature might drop below 1,000 degrees. My working temperature is 1600 to 2100 degrees for this glass. Alright, now I'm using this green thread. I'm going to put the petioles, like I did the petals, as little dashes around the edge of the disc. Melt those in. I don't have a really good defined circle separating the petioles from the petals, so I'm not going to poke them in because I think that would just interfere with the layers of the design. You can probably see the green petioles outside of the blue petals. The petals are actually inside the surface of the disc a little bit now. Alright, now the glass is going to move a little bit faster. I'll do a series of quick cup shapes and pushes to bring the glass around and force it up in. Not force, entice. Assist. The combination of heat, surface tension, and gravity. I almost don't even need to be here. Now I think you can see the flower is starting to bloom up into the disc. Now at this point, you can do this fairly fast and try to keep it moving, or go slow, depending on how fast you do it and how hard you push down. You can change the shape of the flower as it moves up into the disc. It can be sort of a flat squished flower, a straight up into the rod attachment portion. Now you can see, flower is blooming. And I know you might be saying to yourself, why does he keep moving it? Just hold it still so I can see. Habit. If you don't keep things constantly spinning, they start to sag and can fall off. So, constantly keeping things moving is you working with the glass's viscosity and the ever-present gravity. Now you can really see this one blooming. You can see the stamen and the petals and petioles, and then you can see the design on the end is hardly on the surface at all. It's shrunk way down. Now I'm going to shrink this a couple more times and get that little concentric circle design on the end of the disc to close down almost to a point. Can make these marbles bigger or smaller depending on the diameter of the rod that I start with, because that gives me a bigger gather on the end. And you don't need to start on a rod. You can get a gather out of the furnace and do this as well. type of glass you use, the amount of fluxing agent in the glass, how hot your torch is, will all influence the speed and size of the kind of marble that you can make. There. Almost closed. A couple more little ones. So I stopped supporting the disc form so much as with each flattening, I'm letting it become more and more of a sphere. Stop moving it! There it is. I like the way it's looking right now. I'm going to give it one more little pull down and shrink of the design end. And push up into the glass ball. And now I'm going to decorate that end so it actually looks like something. I'll start with just some green to match the petioles. So I get a small gather and put it right on the end. I'm going to point that rod up because I'm going to use it later as a handle. You can never touch the glass except for with tools. And the way you hold it is either with a glass rod or a steel rod. Steel rod's not as common these days because most people are working in a different kind of glass than I am. So I am just using my marble mold to get that a little bit round. Marble mold is a hemisphere of graphite where I'm using a turning motion, surface tension, gravity, pressure to have the tool assist me in getting the marble rounder. Alright, so I put that little green dot on the end. I'm going to decorate it with a little cane that I pulled earlier. It's 2 shades of blue. I always turn my torch down to just a tiny pinpoint. I'm working with the threads that I pulled. To keep my design where I place it. As this cools, you'll see those dots resolve. Where I place them. And they match the color of the flower. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do is round this end up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. Then I'm going to separate the flower marble from this larger clear rod where it had begun the process. So I'm going to use a small steel rod to get a pretty firm connection point. Whenever I want a really strong connection with the glass, there's going to be any sort of twisting force that I don't want transferred through the glass design, I use a steel rod. Now the steel rod is attached. I'm going to heat the junction where the rod joins the larger gather of the marble. Oops. Didn't do a very good job heating my metal punty rod. which is the fancy glassblower term for handle. Puntia, I think, is short for puntia. Italian for handle, I think. Alright, now I've melted that rod off. Big rod. See, there's some extra glass on there. I don't want to try to push it into the marble and mess up my design, so I'm going to heat it up and tweeze off that extra glass. Bigger, more glass is not better. I would much rather preserve my design and have a smaller marble than have a bigger marble that's mushed. Also, for these flower marbles, I want the flower to take up as much of the inside as I can, rather than a lot of these flower marbles you see where the design is just on the bottom 20-25%, and then with the magnification factor looking in at the top lens, it looks large. For me, I think that's cheating. So. Plus, the quality of my clear is not optically as amazing as some of the other glass people are using. Alright, now I'm going to get this as round as possible. When I start in the marble molds, I always start in one that's a little bit bigger than the marble to approximate the spherical shape. When I'm 95% to the spherical shape, I can go to a hemisphere that's smaller than the diameter of the marble. And I'll just be using the edge of the rim of the marble mold. And as I turn and twist the marble and change the axis of rotation, that circle of the rim is going to be rounding the marble on every axis as I spin it, getting the spherical nature of the marble as perfect as possible. I squished it because I've got some band-aids on my hand and my putty keeps slipping. I'm going to try it again without yapping. See if I can concentrate. Graphite of the marble molds pulls a lot of heat out of the glass, so it chills the surface, making it kind of irregular. It's a very durable way to shape glass, but it lacks a little finesse. So to get the surface very smooth, you can just use the flame to polish, or I have some cherry wood molds that I made. Just kind of, it's like the super old grandpa way of doing it, which I approve of. So my last pass for this portion of the marble that I'm sphericalizing right now, I'm going to run through the cherry wood molds, if I can get them ready one-handed here. Alright, so that's cherry wood that's been soaking in water, holes drilled in it. Are just using that rim area to chill the surface without influencing it. Alright, now my last attachment point on here is going to be a clear rod. I just need a gentle connection with the marble that's not going to mar the clear surface. So I've made a point on this rod, and by controlling the temperature and how I attach them, it's going to be a, it's hard to do it and show you. It's going to be a cold seal. So the glasses aren't actually joining each other. It's more like hot glue. So now I just need to fix this end, which is not very round right now, but the top part is. When I detach my final connection point, or handle, or punty, I have a flame and temperature resistant fiber board on my bench with a little divot in it. I'll chill the last punty and crack it off into that divot in the fireboard. They call it fireboard, it's really anti-fireboard. And then I'll pick up my torch and polish that little nub that's left. Then I will take a tweezers that I've made specially for picking up marbles, heat it up to 900 degrees, and I can transfer the marble into an annealing oven, which is going to hold this marble at 950 degrees for an hour. Let all the internal stress in the glass work out. Depending on your glass and the thickness of the glass, there's a formula for how long it needs to anneal. I won't get into that. It's super boring. Alright. This is pretty round, so my last pass on this side, which I just rounded, the graphite flame, I'm going to do in the cherry wood molds. See, the steam is coming off of it. Doesn't look very hot, but it is over 1,000 degrees. So now I will crack this off into the thing I was talking about, the flame-proof board. And I will preheat these tongs. I know by the color of the metal as it heats up what temperature they'll be, so once they hit orange, they'll go just back to black. That's about the right temperature. Let's see here. Looking for another two. Ah, there we go. Polish that. I wish I could show you. I'll figure that out for future demonstrations. Get the temperature right on this. And put that in the oven. All right. I'm going to do that. Let's see, what time is it? 6:30. We're going to do that one more time. Because that is what I had planned for today. One of the next things I'm working on is a series of leaf murinis, which is basically you make a leaf shape, encase it in whatever background color around the outside you want, and then you pull it into a long strand and then cut it up. Here's one I made the other day. So in cross section there are a lot of little oak leaves in here, green oak leaves. I'd like to have about 10 different ones for some earrings that I'm going to make if the farmer's market ever opens back up again. I'll take some pictures of the process. Alright, because I was yapping, I messed up this glass rod. Oh, the puppet master is here. Barb! Hi, Barb.
Hi. So now what are you going to do?
I'm doing a flower marble.
I think that's cool.
I did one already. So work the bugs out. It's pretty slow. So I put a lot of cracks in this rod because I got it up to temperature and I let it cool down. Now all those cracks translated into little tiny bubbles. So that is what I'm tweezing out of here right now, because I want this initial gather to be as clear as possible, because that will be the glass that is surrounding the flower.
When you're all done?
Yeah, and you don't want the bubbles and the tiny little fluff on the glass to obscure the view of the flower. So once the gather gets up to about twice the diameter of the rod, I'll flatten it out and make a disc. And the disc I will draw the flower on as a series of concentric dots. So I think this time I'll do a red flower with black stamen. This gather looks pretty good. I'm going to see if I can adjust the camera position. A little bit. See better. Jim was commenting that the graphite is more stable than like newspaper that a lot of people use for forming glass, which is very true. I've had a lot of my glass marble molds for like 20 years. And I mean, you can definitely see the wear on them. But every year or two, I have to remake those cherry wood molds because they get worn out. The graphite's pretty tough. Alright, so that's the disc. I'm going to put little black stamen in this one. And I think I want those stamen to be pointy, so I'm going to poke those up. But I'll wait till the petals are on there. So there's the stamen. I like to do 5 for some reason. I don't know why. Probably not botanically accurate. But I don't care. Alright, let's get that warmed back up. Now I'm going to put in the lines of petals. There will be little dashes again. Little slugs. Slugs are easier to hit with the dental pick to push in a dent to make it pointy. But I'm going to do the opposite on this one. I'm going to poke in the stamen, but leave the petal with a rounded edge, so I'm not going to poke them in. So I'm doing a bad job on keeping the heat consistent. You can see my rod has cracked just above where it joins the disc. I think it'll be alright. But if it falls off, This marble is over. Goes into the bucket of water. Alright, so I'm heating up the disc, especially the stamen, those little black dots, because I want to poke them in. And when you're doing glass like that, you can do it carefully, you can do it good, and somewhere in between there is art. I'll let you know. Alright, those are melted in pretty nice. Give it its first little flatten on the marvering plate. Now I'm going to shrink it a few times, basically turning this disc into a torus, where the outside is coming out and then going up into the center. Torus is donut in geometry talk. Very fancy. Alright, but once I shrink it a few times, I'll put on some petioles around the outside of the circle of, the outer circle of petals. So I think this is already a better way to do this than doing the demonstrations live, where it's so easy for people to show up just turning on their computer rather than coming down here. Now I just have to figure out a way to translate that into people I don't know coming here and then buying stuff. Once again, I will let you know how that works out. Alright, I've added the petioles around the layers of petals. The petals are already embedded in the clear a bit. I will let this disc fall a little cup shape and flatten it out a few times, and then reassess the situation. There's another way I like to make flowers, but I worry that would be slower than most people's attention span for watching glass. Especially because I'm not 100% sure how good this looks with just me aiming my phone at my torch. The plan was always to have several camera angles that could be switched between, with like one on the annealing oven, or if I was actually blowing glass, one on the furnace, one on the hand burner, one on this burner. I don't know. We'll see. I have a couple cameras. I was not happy with their resolution. The camera on the phone is way better than the webcams that I had. The webcams I'd been accumulating for the purpose of doing multiple angles on a demonstration. So much easier in person because you can just hold it up and people nod and they say, "Oh, look. Can you see that? Oh yeah, that's cool." Alright, that one is blooming up. I need a close-up camera. There you can see it. I was wondering when I started if I'd be able to see people's comments as we go on the little screen. I can. That's pretty cool. I was trying to set up a second device, but they figured out in advance how to keep people from doing that, I guess. I could not find the workaround unless I logged on as a different person. But I think that might be cheating. I don't know. All right. That one is too hot to see, but we'll see in a second. All right, now there's the little end, which is a little bit fuzzy in the video and in real life. It's actually just a fuzzy dot because the glass has been overheated there a little bit and the design has spread out into the clear. So that is a great opportunity to take some colored glass and just cover that up with a little dot, then decorate that dot. It makes a great place to sign the marble, and the color that you use for the dot also makes a backdrop, like the flower is sitting on whatever background color dot you put on there. So in this case I did blue, so it looked like a red flower sitting on a blue background. So I added that dot. I'm going to melt it in and I'll decorate it. Oh, cool. Yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to get rid of the sodium flare. I have a series of little shields that I made for my webcams, like this, which is basically a Aura lens. There we go. Yeah. An Aura lens 92 lens for soft glass workers that I made with some little copper wire so I could fit it on various cameras. On the lower resolution cameras, it was not making any difference. They would like auto-correct and make the flare even worse and more difficult to see. So I think maybe just a higher resolution camera might be in order. Yes. I'll let you know how it works out. This camera is just on my phone. Alright, the marble surface is a little bit wavy because of the graphite mold, but now I can detach it from this cracked main rod that it's attached to, and it didn't drop off. Yeehaw. Oh, I didn't decorate that end. I'll do that quickly with this red. I'll just do a little squiggly line. And I'll pull the line in towards the center. That's not great. Not my best work there. Whoops. Demo marbles. Always like a little bit rushed and a little bit weird. I have a friend who's got a store in Kansas City that I go to every year to do a show, and I think almost all the marbles he makes are demonstration marbles, and he's gotten really, really good at it. That's that marble crazy event that you might see me posting about now and again. It is super fun. Alright, so I detached it from the main rod. And now that main rod where it connected with the disc was crackled and there's some bubbles in there. So not only do I want to get rid of that extra glass, I want to make sure I pick out any big bubbles that are going to detract from the design. Looks like I got most of them already. I'll just go ahead and get that last large piece off and reassess. Looks like they're all taken care of. Alright, so I've gone into my mold, into the larger hemisphere than the diameter of the marble, approximated the spherical shape, and then gone into the smaller one. And by turning it and varying the angle, changing the axis, I've made this quite spherical. Now, I'm going to heat it up and do my last pass to smooth the surface in the cherry wood molds. The cherry wood I have, I traded a guy for some lathe work about 30 years ago, and he said that this was an old guy, probably my age at the time. He said that he had cut down this cherry tree and made it into boards about 20 or 30 years previous to him trading it to me. So, for marble making, mold making in general, that means it's very stable. This particular marble paddles and tools I've had soaking in water for about 20 some years. So when I want to make another mold, they are about as good as you can get. Alright, so that one is pretty spherical. The flower. Ooh. So the top edges of the petal are soft because I didn't poke them in, and then the stamen should actually poke out a little bit past the petal edge and be pointy because I poked those in with a dental pick, which is the opposite of the previous marble, where the stamen were rounded and the petals were pointy. Alright, I was just bringing the temperature of the marble back up, and now I'm going to make a pencil point on this clear glass rod, where I'm going to make my final attachment point here, which will be just a very soft joining. Some people call that a cold joint. It's not really cold. As hot as melting into the surface, so relatively cold, I guess. Alright, this marble was pretty spherical. I just have to give it a little bit of persuasion on the bottom end, and then I'll give it the last pass through the cherry wood to get rid of any ripples on the surface. I noticed when I was holding it up, I have some ripples farther back towards the joining point, so I'm going to give those a few minutes of flame polish. And then I'm going to heat up this unattached end to a slightly higher temperature so that surface tension pulls it spherical, and then I'm going to cool the surface as it's all cooling down by running it through the last mold. Always a fun balance and dance between temperature, surface tension, gravity, and your tool. So here's my last pass with the cherry wood. Between 3 and 5 seconds in each area, so I don't burn the wood. I want there to still be water in the wood as I finish. There we go. Now I'm going to tap it off into the fireboard. I will grab my camera and show you that. So I tapped off the rod end. The marble on the fireboard, and I'm going to flame polish it. Can't quite tell if my camera's pointed in the right direction. Just polishing that nub. I'm going to put down my torch, put down the camera. Now I'll preheat these tongs so that they're about 1,000 degrees, and then as they cool down to about 950, and I just know by the color of the metal where I can touch the glass. I pick it up with the tongs, and then from here I got about 30 seconds to take it and put it in the annealing oven, where it needs to sit for about an hour and then get gradually lowered in temperature. Alright, that is it. 2 marbles. That works out to be about an hour. I'm going to turn off my torch. Say thank you for coming by and watching. Oops. Thank you for coming by and watching. And someone is going to get a prize. What are those marbles in there? The annealing oven. Let's see. Can we see that over there? I don't know. I can't see where I'm pointing this. Alright. Next week we'll do something different, like a monster eye or a dragon eye or some sort of stacked dot technique, which is basically a mostly clear marble where you add layers and layers and layers and you turn it. It's technical, an exercise in control and temperature. Well, we'll see. Thanks. Bye-bye. Mwah.